What's going on, guys? We were recording a little earlier tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the first episode of November, which means, guys, this is the first of the last 8 episodes of the podcast year 2023, Season 5. 2023 has been a very, very big year, very interesting year as far as movies and TV go. And we're going to begin the wrap up once again by talking about what it is that everybody in the internet loves talking about, which is superhero movies. We're going to be talking about the long-awaited premiere of Season 2 of Invincible, as well as a couple of things that are going on right now at Marvel Studios with a couple of very, let's call them revealing news stories that have come out around the studio recently. They've been picking up a lot of buzz and a lot of traction, and I feel like we kind of had to talk about it. We haven't had a little bit of a town hall news-centered episode in quite a minute. I am once again joined by Eli Holicky and Zhao Big J of Unyolo Movie Reviews. Guys, happy to have you back. Ready to talk about some superheroes tonight?
Yeah, let's go.
Excited.
Oh, man, it's going to be good. Eli, I know you and I have been waiting a long time for Invincible Season 2. This is going to be a good one, to say the least. All of that and more on tonight's episode of the Talking TV podcast. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another fantastic, fun-filled podcast episode. I am, of course, your host, Dom, the movie nerd, Rizzy, and we are here to talk about what else? Superheroes. Because let's face it, I'm pretty sure that's why people on the internet even like have a lot of channels to begin with. If it's not gaming or sports related or politics related, it's usually superhero related. But not the usual. We are going to talk about the MCU and the state of everything going on with Marvel Studios right now. But first, we're going to talk about the return of a show that we never actually got a chance to talk about when it first initially aired in 2021. It is an adaptation of a comic by a very well-known comic writer, the creator of the Walking Dead universe, Robert Kirkman, who kind of shocked the world with this alternative comic arc that basically, the best way that I can describe it is that it's a mix between like, it really is a mix between Superman and I'm not going to say Watchmen because it's not super as deconstructive as probably one would let on, like The Boys, but it is kind of interesting how it does have more of like that rated R, that really gritty, that really grounded feeling. I'm talking about Invincible. The trailer for it, if memory serves, came out sometime either at the end of 2020 or at the beginning of 2021. It was kind of Amazon's next big follow-up in order to kind of fill in the gaps that The Boys had left over, since The Boys had become really a pretty substantial part of superhero pop culture in the wake of the end of that era of Marvel. And then in comes Invincible, which is kind of the next in a wave of adult animated shows that really seem to be upsetting the normal balance of traditional adult animated shows. You know, for the longest time, it's really just been the same type of, you know, comedic shows, your Family Guys, your South Parks, your American Dads, your Futuramas, your Rick and Mortys, and stuff like that have kind of been dominating the airwaves. But recently, I feel like cartoons have just been hitting a whole different kind of airspace, you know, with Netflix expanding with things like Arcane, Amazon with things like Invincible, and also the fantasy show, The Legend of Vox Machina. Even some of the more traditional houses, you know, with some of the Star Wars animation that Disney's been doing recently as they expanded to Disney Plus. Animation, it feels like it's just taken on a whole new wave of its own. So in addition to covering the area of superheroes, you've also got that kind of niche covered with this show. Eli, I remember when this was like right before I ended up moving back to Oswego, and I remember when we first met, we first started talking. One of the areas which we bonded was Invincible, and just seemingly how groundbreaking and how awesome and how different it seemed. You know, the idea of superhero fatigue has recently been in the air a lot. So the idea of shows like this coming in and really helping to shift things around was really nice and refreshing, on top of the fact that we already had something as deconstructive as The Boys. But Eli, what is it that sets Invincible apart from something like The Boys, something like Marvel, something that gives us kind of hope for the superhero genre going forward, that we can still get cool, fresh, original feeling stories in this, in what is arguably the most popular and I would say overvalued and overshared form of media that we have these days?
Well, I definitely say it's a more grounded experience in terms of watching someone kind of become a superhero or learn the ways of becoming a superhero, in like a very like brutal fashion. I mean, there's, not to get too spoilery, but there is a scene pretty early on where obviously this character has super strength and he's trying to save someone from like an explosion, or I don't remember what it was. There was an alien invasion happening and he ended up like snapping her back or like breaking her arm or something and like trying to get her to the hospital. It was this very traumatic moment for him, and the whole show is kind of littered with moments like that, and I just think it's a very like brutal kind of exploration of like, holy shit, like, having super strength is you can't just really, you got to be so careful. And it's just, I don't know, this is so interesting, all the different routes they take with the between the different dimensions, and there's all these different planets with aliens, and they're very much constantly interacting with Earth, and not like in an MCU way where they just show up when there's just some bad guy they got to defeat. It's there's all these moving pieces or these other like villains and side characters we actually get to learn a lot about, and surprisingly they get in some very deep themes that I think are handled very well, and it's very interesting to kind of see unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. Zhao, so you and I actually, I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to talk about the show in our many, many conversations we've had about superheroes and the superhero genre. When did you first become aware of this show? And what is it about it that really set it apart from a lot of the other superhero fare that we've talked about recently?
Yeah, so I kind of stumble into it. To be honest, when I saw it the first time, like trailers and stuff, I wasn't very excited because the animation is very weird. We used very crisp animation, and this was not it. Um, and to be honest, for me, I never felt it was. I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball Z, and like this for me is like Dragon Ball. If you allow them to kind of like rip the arms and like be bloody, this is exactly. And like if you saw the second season, that starting opening sequence of the fight, and you see the holes in the clouds, that's completely a rip off from Dragon Ball. So, the thing is, I felt very into it straight away because it reminded me of like a lot of Dragon Ball, and in a lot of things, like this kid that's kind of learning how to control these immense powers that he has and stuff. So I was straight into it. It just took a little bit of time to get used to the animation, but like even like the gory bit and the extreme violence, I think after things like the boys and stuff didn't like really surprise you in that. But I think what's very good is they have a really good voice casting. I think that's one of the biggest things there, that it works really well. And then it is just a show that I don't think it's very worried about pleasing things. It's his own thing. And even from the animation, I think a lot of like studios would be afraid of releasing this not being as Pixar or Disney or so perfect. So I think all that together, it just being his own thing, I think it kind of like makes you fall in love with it. And it was one of my favorite shows when it came out, season one. And I just think he has a lot of potential. I'm just like, but we'll go into season two in a bit. But yeah, I just fall into it by mistake, kind of, and I just couldn't stop watching it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it kind of pulls a trick on you. You know, you go into this, you don't really know what to expect. It's got this really weird animation. You're like, it's not quite anime, but it's also like, it's not like super basic, like American like bubbly looking. It's got kind of like its own depth and texture without like, but it's not exactly groundbreaking when it comes to animation. And the story kind of fools you because the first episode is primarily like almost a little too cookie cutter superhero like friendly in its origin, where you've got this kid whose dad is this mega famous superhero in this world kind of populated by superheroes, and he's just kind of waiting for his powers to kick in, and then they do, and it's like you're going through like the Spider-Man / Superman origin story of it's like, okay, he just wants to be the best that he can be and all that, and he's obviously going to fight bad guys, and you're like, okay, so this is going to be like what, generic? And then the ending of that first episode happens for the first season, and you're like, oh okay, so that's what we're in for. And it's not just this show, but with The Boys. I think the biggest difference between this show and The Boys is the fact that this is still mixing a lot of that like kind of traditional like things that you love about superhero movies, kind of that idealism with a little bit more of like the modern grounded, gritty nature of like, no, this is what would happen if like superheroes really existed in the real world, which is kind of what made The Boys stand out so much when it first was released, where it's like, it helped that when The Boys first premiered, but it had only been a few months since Avengers Endgame. And so, and the fact for that show to immediately hit the ground running and be like, okay, you guys have this idea of what superheroes are supposed to be now because of this decade-long running project. Now we're going to come in and show you something completely different and like flip it right on its head. And what was so cool about Invincible is that it really kind of followed in that track, but it was like mixing and meshing around it. It was like, it's playing around with people's expectations, which is what you need to do, I think, after having something as big and popular as Marvel run for so long. And I think that's what a lot of studios missed in the immediate wake of it. They're just like, oh, we just got to keep giving them more stuff like Marvel. And it's like, no, we got a decade long with Marvel. It worked. It was really good. Now we kind of want something different. And on top of the fact that just the mainstream superhero stuff, quality-wise, just really hasn't been cutting it. It was just it was just nice and fascinating to see something that was not only different, but something a little bit more challenging, a little bit more complex, especially because as time went on and we kept getting more episodes. Besides the fact that we just kept getting like insane new facets of this world, like secret government agencies and different alien civilizations. And now we're getting like different dimensions and stuff. A lot of characters with some more sinister maybe motivations, characters who thought were going to be one thing that turned into another thing. It's got a lot of complexities. It's got a lot of layers that you wouldn't expect. Like you were talking about, Joe, incredible voice cast. You got Steven Yeun leading the charge as Mark, the main character. You got J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson himself voicing Omni-Man, his dad, who, of course, the minute that he comes on, okay, he's the latest of like evil Superman iteration. So naturally, people are going to compare him to Homelander. Sandra Oh, Jason Mantzoukas, Jillian Jacobs, Kerry Payton, Walton Goggins. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Seth Rogen even pops in for a cameo there. So, and the biggest thing too about that first season is that when the first season ended, you had just this wave of memes that came out, and you know that a show is successful when it can generate just like a ton of memes just on its own, with the think moments and just the final twist and reveal of Omni-Man's of Omni-Man's true allegiance and what he's really doing on Earth and how that affects Mark and all that. It's really great storytelling. It's really great character building. I feel like it's kind of in along the lines of the latest conversation of whether superhero fatigue is real. This is the latest demonstration of the fact that it's like we'll still watch superhero stuff. Just the storytelling just has to be good because we've come to have such this level of expectation when it comes to these things that you really, really have to try hard in order to surpass them. Now, going into the season 2 premiere, it had been a little bit of time since that first season ended, and we famously had about a 2.5-year wait almost. The first season premiered all the way back in February of 2021, I want to say. So it's been a long time since we've had this show. And I remember, fans were eagerly waiting and chomping at the bit, being like, when are we getting more Invincible? When are we getting more Invincible? We've had 3 things of The Boys in that time period since then. We had the animated shorts that came out. Then we had season 3. Then we just wrapped up this weekend as well, Gen V, which is The Boys spinoff set in college, which has also been equally as great, where they're just being like, hey, what if we basically took like an Animal House-esque college coming of age story and set it in The Boys universe, and it worked out so much better than I could have possibly thought that the trailers had to show for it. And so you're going into season 2, and it does that thing that I'm very, very picky when it comes to returning seasons of television, especially with returning seasons of television that are coming after a first season that was just so good, because it's very, very difficult to draw me in with just an initial season. It's so beyond difficult in today's day and age with the amount of shows that we get. And so obviously after that gangbusters season 1 finale, I'm waiting, and I'm like, okay, what are they going to do next? What's going on? And of course, they kick it right off with just one of the most surprising things, which shows obviously Invincible and his dad fighting the Immortal. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess the whole Mark choosing Earth over Viltrum, I guess that's out the window now. And then it immediately shows it's like, nah, you thought you were going to have some idea of what's going on. You're not. And you immediately get launched back into this universe. You're seeing Mark and his mom as they're trying to pick up the pieces after Omni-Man leaves Earth. You've got the what's called. You've got the new Guardians or whatever they are. Mark's former teammates still trying to operate in the old Guardians' place and doing a piss poor job. You've got the Muller twins back in action, being recruited by a strange new figure who could potentially be an enemy of Mark's. So after watching this new episode, we all watched it. The first episode dropped on Friday. They're doing another weird, messy thing with the release date, probably owing to the fact that they announced the release date while the writer's strike was still going on, which is that they're only releasing the first 4 episodes of this season this month, and then the remaining 4 will be aired sometime in the beginning of 2024. But after watching it, guys, we're going to start with Yola first. What did we think of the season 2 premiere of Invincible?
Well, I have something that to say. I think it's bad timing. I think there's too many things about the multiverse, and I think they had bad timing. That it's just another and it's not their fault. It's not their fault because like the comic books goes and stuff like that. So, but with Loki, with all the Marvel things of the multiverse, there's so many stuff, like so many movies, so many TV shows that are going on the multiverse and all this. And I just wanted to have more of how we finished. I expected to have more about like the problems that he was having dealing with this with his father. And I just wanted something a little bit more restrained. And I think with the possibilities now of the like, and we saw in episode 1 without wanting to go on spoilers, it got very big very fast. It's like, and I think that's my problem with usually with these movies and stuff, that they always think, okay, we did this, if fought a guy, now he has to fight 10 or people are going to get bored. And I don't think that's the case. I just wanted him to be smaller than he was. And I'm a bit like thinking, okay, now we're going to all this multiverse and it's going to be all this like characters coming in that are going to be different versions of everyone, and I just wanted something different. So I did enjoy it. I think I did took a little bit of time to get used to the animation, because the animation now it's better, and I was used to not being that good. So I kind of like was I found it strange in the beginning, but very fast I got used to it. Like the fighting things, the violence is still cool, but I just think that like it kind of reminded me of the last scene of the Justice League when they go into that world that's completely different, and now we have Batman and Superman and they evil and fighting each other. So the only thing that I would criticize is that it was like it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. It was cool, but I'm a bit worried that it's gonna just become just like this multiverse of madness kind of thing, and that's my only issue with it.
Yeah, definitely considering that like there's a lot of other avenues that to go in the comics that proved to be really interesting. Specifically, like my biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is there's some I was doing some reading ahead in terms of what happens in the comics, and there is a point where Viltrumite does try to invade Earth, and there are some crazy things that happen in the meantime there. But yeah, Eli, going off of that, are you worried, given that like Invincible is the latest, not even just superhero thing, but latest pop culture thing to be tackling the multiverse, especially when it's like, I feel like just from a pop culture standpoint, we're already sick of the multiverse, and we're not even like 2-3 years into this whole experiment.
Yeah, I didn't even know that it went like a multiverse route, because I never seen or read the comics or anything like that. So the show is my only kind of reference point for what this story is. I don't know anything about what happens later on. So to see that it was going a multiverse route initially did give me a little skepticism, but I think that they're handling the story in a pretty decent way. Where they're kind of using it more. It's kind of a matter of stakes whenever you do something like this, because when you immediately go there's infinite possibilities of anything, it's you're walking a very thin line between like you can just do anything, like you can have an answer to any threat and things like that. I mean, Doctor Strange, I really don't think handled it well. I mean, we can go on and on about how the MCU applies it,
Oh,
but the
don't worry, we
way
will.
Oh yeah, but the way that Invincible's been seeming to do it is they've been setting up for just constant threats, like threat after threat after threat. Where, because I feel like there's like this, like we know Viltrumite is like obviously got their eyes on Earth. So what's stopping hypothetically from like going to all these other dimensions and recruiting a bunch of other marks, to help fight them, or Omni-Men? But now we hear that, in most other universes they end up teaming up and they're actually on their side. Okay, well that answers that. The allies are pretty skim, so it's kind of they still have their own battles to fight in their own world, let alone before they get to any other world, right? And obviously the guy, I forget his name, but he like merged his brains
Oh
together.
yeah, Angstrom Levi, the newest
Right, yeah.
villain, voiced by Sterling K. Brown.
I think that's actually very, very interesting to kind of merge a bunch of personalities from all these separate universes into one dude and kind of see how it's like because there could be like maybe only 5 of him that like see him as an enemy, but like it seemed like he didn't really know what memories were his and what memories weren't. And so now you have this guy who can go to any multiverse now that hates our main character, and he can just bring in like, multiple people that could be more powerful than him. And I think it is a good setup for future conflicts. And I also like how they are handling the character dynamics, especially with Immortal, where even though Immortal is this allies of Mark's, and it's kind of nice to have someone that powerful kind of back on their side. Are they really on the same side, given that how Immortal views Omni-Man now, and Mark being his son and everything like that? I think is very interesting. Where just because there is a multiverse doesn't mean things are going to get any easier now.
Yeah, definitely. Very understandably so, I think, after how brutally the Immortal was killed and then put back together and then killed again and then put back together almost by the secret government organization. But yeah, it immediately sets up that like, okay, this is a very much changed universe that we're in for now. This is a post Omni-Man reveal universe now. Now that they know really what they're up against in terms of the stakes, not to mention that before they just thought that we're going to have to prepare for a potential invasion from Viltrumite, but now they've also got this multiversal threat to contend with, with this Angstrom Levi character who now has the knowledge of like an infinite number of known universes potentially armed with it in order to take on Invincible. And so now Mark's got all of this other stuff to go on to deal with on top of, just his regular everyday life struggles, the Spider-Man.
Man has college to think about now.
Exactly. He's got college, he's got his girlfriend, all of that. It's pretty much taking all the best of Marvel and DC, where you literally got somebody with the powers of Superman, but mixed with those regular everyday life coming of age struggles that Spider-Man usually deals with. I also did particularly enjoy, just if we're going to talk about this specific episode, I love how, because it was a trope in the first season where the way that they would cut to the title cards, they would always cue someone up by saying like, oh, this person's got to be, and then they would cut to the title card. But I like how in this episode they played around with that a little bit, where they kept seeming like they were going to cue you up for the title card, and then they just had set Invincible, and then they did it like 3 or 4 times or something like that before they finally did it at the end. And like by the time you got to the end, you knew it was going to happen. I just thought that was like a funny bit there. Yeah, so as far as first episodes go, it definitely went in a direction that I wasn't expecting, but I think we're still going to be in for a really solid sophomore season. I don't think this is going to go the way of the sophomore slump, which is something that happens with so many different second seasons of shows. But before we move on to Marvel, do you guys have any like potential predictions as far as where this could go? Because I for my money, at least, I've done no reading. I was not expecting any sort of another multiversal thing. I thought it was just going to be another like kind of bad guy for the weekend. We do have that, but this is kind of flipping it on its head. So you guys have like any predictions as far as like where we could go or in this season? The other thing as well is that Robert Kirkman said that they have already begun work on season 3, so the wait between seasons 2 and 3 will not be nearly as long, fingers crossed, as it was between seasons 1 and 2. Eli, I start with you this time.
Oh, geez, I couldn't tell you. The only thing I am willing to bet my life savings on is that Omni-Man will eventually resurface. I don't even know if it'll be this season, because, I mean, my assumption is he probably went back to kind of just regroup with the Viltrumites, at least I think, or maybe not, I don't know. But whether we'll see him this season or not, like the one from the main universe that we're following, no idea. I think it's going to be very interesting to explore, whereas like usually the person who can kind of bounce through dimensions is always like the good guy and uses their power for good. Well, now we have the dude who bounces through dimensions and he now hates our protagonist and wants to kill him. I think that's a very nice subversion of that trope that we've been seeing. So it's going to be really cool to see where they go with that. And in terms of future conflicts or where the rest of the season is going to go, it quite literally could be anything now, I think, which I think is a good and a bad thing. Like I said, it's kind of about walking that tight line of keeping the stakes like grounded and, not having it so that they can kind of solve their problems too easily with the multiverse stuff. But since it seems like the only guy who can really have access to the multiverse is not on their side, I think it's going to make for a pretty interesting conflict. So I'm not too worried about it. I think they're going to handle it pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. Joe, you got any predictions as far as where the season could go?
Yeah, I think like Eli said, because the bad guy is the one that controls like who can come in and out. I think like we saw that most of the marks around the other universes are against him. So I think he might be able to bring those guys to fight him. So he has to fight himself because on most universes they are against him. So I think there's a lot of stuff there that they can do that's going to be interesting. My only thing is like without wanting to go on spoilers, we saw in the first episode without even having those powerful characters ganging up, and we already had Mark getting his ass kicked. So the thing here is like where you draw the line for us to believe what can happen. Because, for example, if he brings a bunch of Omni-Mans like to fight him, he has to be killed straight away. Like that's the thing, and I think that's one of the things that I'm worried. Like, and this is the Superman problem, right? So like when the characters are so powerful, then it kind of like gets strange when they fight because this is the thing is so powerful that he should like kill most of the other characters with a single punch. And we have all these characters that are gonna go there and like the guy that throws the bombs, I don't remember his name. That I'm still surprised that he's still alive.
Oh, Rex.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for example, that guy, like if he hits him once, he has to be like killed straight away.
Right.
So I think that is the problem when you have these kind of characters. That's the problem when you have movies like Superman because they are so powerful that how you're gonna control and how you're gonna make the story go around. So that's the only
Yeah.
thing that I want them to kind of have a better idea what they're going to do. But I think there's a lot of potential there, bringing in like these characters and just making sure that, like, because before we talk about stakes, but if someone dies, but like for example, this new villain, he dies, but there's like 50,000 others that are just like him. The one thing that I liked is that they said he was the only one that had the power. And I thought that was cool because if it was just like a bunch of guys that all had the power of being able to go from one dimension to the other, this was the thing. This was just like Kang. You killed one, there's another one to replace. So being that this guy is the only one that can use that power, I think there's potential there. I just don't like the idea of having 4 episodes and then having to wait until January or whatever to watch.
Yeah.
That pisses me off. Like,
Yeah, dude, these
Especially with how long we've had to wait already.
Yeah.
right. I was about to say it's like, oh, we understand that you waited so long since season 1, so we're gonna make you. We're only gonna give you half the episodes and then make you wait even longer for the rest. It's like, oh, great, yeah,
but
that's
but
exactly.
it's understandable because I'm sure no one in Amazon ever had like the idea this was going to be the hit that it was. So
True.
for them and being animation, that's the problem. Like if you don't put all your chips in and say, okay, this is going to be a hit, let's start doing the season 2. If you waiting for it to come out, waiting for the reaction, and then you decide to make that's why now season 2 and 3 are going to be, because now they know that they can put the chips in. So like I understand, but I don't know if I would prefer to like had waited until January and see the 8 episodes in a row than having 4 now and then waiting and then having, because that's the thing with me with TV shows, like you said. I think you kind of lose that energy if you have to wait, and because then you don't remember exactly everything that
Yeah.
happened and whatever.
Yeah. From a business perspective now, though, with the streaming services,
Yeah.
I more and more of them are just going to keep releasing their bigger shows week by week now
Yeah.
because they're able to stretch out that subscription for at least another month.
No, yeah, that's something I said since day one on Netflix, that
Yeah.
business model does not work, because we all know that like Stranger Things releases a season, people like do a trial because like there's loads of new emails and stuff you can use. You do a trial, you watch that season, then you turn it off. So for sure, this is gonna be the new how it's gonna be every week getting a new episode. That's not gonna be even a discussion in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, not a fan of the release schedule, but again, it's that they can do it because they have us in the palm of their hands. Amazon's always a weird streaming service to talk about in the canon of streaming services, where it's like they've barely got any shows to begin with, but like the few shows that they do have, it's like people can't stop talking about, like The Boys and all of its spinoffs, like Invincible, like the action shows, your Jack Ryans, your Reachers, your Terminal Lists and such. You know, they understand their audience, and occasionally they'll take a risk, but not often. Not very often. They are very much known for, you know, they've tried with their foray into fantasy with things like Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings, and for the most part, I think it's safe to say that those have pretty much been flops. I don't know, the Wheel of Time reception, it's different every time I hear about it. Lord of the Rings now, Eli, you were telling me that apparently they're considering shrinking it down from 5 seasons, which is what they originally had planned, to 3. Which honestly, I say, if you ask me, that they could never make another season of that show, and I'll be very, very happy.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, but moving on to real quick before we move on to Marvel, what are your guys' final thoughts and star ratings on this first episode of Invincible season 2?
I probably landed on a 4. I think it's still it's hard for me to rate a TV show just on one episode because it can go very wrong very fast. So I still have some worries. So I would say I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Got it, Eli.
I'd say also a 4. I mean, I thought it was a pretty solid episode overall. I think that, like I talked about, the character setups I think are really interesting, and I mean, there's a little uncertainty moving forward just with it being a multiverse kind of plot line now, and quite literally anything can happen. So I think maybe once I see 1 or 2 more episodes, I'll be able to have a better idea of like how I can rank this overall. But yeah, I'd say 4. I think is pretty good. They're still dealing with the consequences of just the mayhem that was the end of season 1, and I like that because there are some characters that are really traumatized, and I think it's going to serve them well in the long term, character arc wise. And so I'm very happy that they're not just pulling a Marvel and an entire city was destroyed anyways. Here's the next thing, and don't worry about that. But so I'm glad they're doing that. It makes it feel like there's real weight behind everything that happens in the destruction, which only, like I said, amps up the stakes. So
absolutely, yeah. And Eli, you said that was one of the most telling sequences of what the show was going to be in that first season. With that second episode, when you had Mark trying to defend against an entire alien invasion, just people bodies dropping left and right in the most bloody fashion ever. You're like, oh, okay. It was literally like The Boys, but in animated format. It was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the MCU, moving on to that. Oh man, just like that. I think it's safe to say that in terms of people saying that the studios have switched places now that the punching bag that is DC is finally seemingly going away. Oh man, like Marvel, what the hell is going on over there? So I guess we should preface by saying that since the release of the book by Joanna Robinson of The Ringer, that being MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, came out and revealed basically what a lot of people had already kind of known for years about Marvel, but then basically confirmed it. The news stories have just been dropping left and right, you know, between delays and them trying to figure out what the next stage storytelling-wise is going to be, to to Disney coming under a ton of scrutiny over a lot of their projects, the biggest one being the Snow White thing, which is just so comical how that happened from a PR standpoint. Like, how in the hell that was allowed to become the PR nightmare that it is now, to even more things are getting just delayed nonstop because of the actor strike. I think probably my favorite news story that came out, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot that we got to cover, but my favorite of the lesser known ones is just Blade, which is now on, I believe, its 6th writer or something like that, with Logan scribe Michael Green coming on to do yet another spin on the script. Apparently, Mahershala Ali almost walked multiple times because the original script was only an hour and a half. It was PG-13, not R. And it turns out that Blade, the character, was relegated to like only being the 4th lead of the movie, which is just hilarious.
I heard that it was supposed to be a female lead.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was supposed to be like the first of like several female leads. It was supposed to be like his daughter or something, and he was just going to be relegated to like a background mentor figure. And Mahershala Ali took one look at that, was like, the fuck is this bullshit? To even more news about, again, you got all these TV shows that have been delayed. Ironheart being delayed to 2025. Agatha getting renamed so many times I can't even keep track. Daredevil apparently getting scrapped when they had like half an entire season shot, because apparently it was like getting all this criticism. People saying it was nothing like what made the original Netflix show great. It was going to be a boring legal drama. Matt Murdock wasn't even going to don the costume until episode 4. How Foggy Nelson, they killed him off screen, and then Matt was going to be avenging his death. And so they're completely starting that from scratch. That will no longer make its 2024 release date window. That has now been delayed until next year. More than likely, they have not delayed Deadpool 3 yet, even though there's no way in hell they're going to be able to make that early May 2024 release because of the actor strike and the fact that they still have a ton of shooting left to do. But all of that kind of dovetails into the most recent news articles. The two biggest ones being that, and this is all in the wake of the fact that the Marvels is releasing next week and is already slated to be somehow a worse box office failure than The Flash, which I don't even know how that's possible, considering that The Flash is like the lowest grossing superhero release in over a decade since Green Lantern. On top of the fact that the Marvels was also going to be the shortest MCU movie ever at only 88 minutes, which is just hilarious to say the least. We thought that Thor: Love and Thunder was going to be shooting enough with that was like just barely scratched the 2-hour mark, and now you got something that's like not even hitting an hour and a half. But the two biggest news stories that were released in the last week being that in the wake of the Jonathan Majors trial, and I'm not sure where that trial is going to go, and the PR nightmare that's resulted around the fact that the guy who they pretty much set this new iteration of their universe around, the whole multiverse saga around, is now potentially going to jail for the rest of his life. So they have decided to potentially pivot away from Kang the Conqueror as for being the end-all be-all big bad and pivoting towards Doctor Doom, which I'm like, okay, weren't they planning on doing that already? Because the part 2 of the big 2-part finale they were going to do for the Multiverse Saga is Secret Wars, which the primary villain of Secret Wars is not Kang the Conqueror, it's Doctor Doom. But also the fact that now, because of just the overall reaction towards the amount of new characters that they've introduced, they are now, as many of us had pretty much already guessed, making offers. Supposedly Robert Downey Jr. has taken an offer to appear in Secret Wars. Chris Evans has supposedly accepted an offer. The only one that is not confirmed yet is Scarlett Johansson, whose lawyers, I believe, are seeking a new case against Disney after the whole 2021 Black Widow release date debacle. Oh man, just fun times. Just fun times going over on there. Eli, I think it's safe to say that like with all this stuff going on, like in the wake of streaming and everything that's happened with Disney post Avengers Endgame, I think it's safe to say that all this stuff happening, it was always a matter of when, not if. And now that kind of like, and this is all kind of in the wake of that South Park episode that dropped, just relentlessly making fun of Kathleen Kennedy. So the floodgates have officially been opened, has officially been opened. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are, or considering the fact that this is something we've already been talking about for a couple of years now.
All I'm going to say is about damn time. But I mean, yeah, we kind of saw this coming with the amount of money that Disney Plus, I believe Disney Plus lost over $8 billion last year.
Something like that. It's been bleeding the money since for a couple years now.
Spending really just insane amounts of money on these TV shows that no one's been watching anyway. I mean, Secret Wars, I believe, had more money spent on it than per episode than the final season of Game of Thrones. If I remember
She-Hulk, you mean She-Hulk?
Maybe it was She-Hulk. Yeah,
it was She-Hulk. Yeah,
I know it was one of the
which is hilarious which is hilarious when you consider just how shit the effects of that show were.
Oh, absolutely.
That show barely even hit 25 minutes an episode with credits.
Yeah, which is insane to think about, but it shows you that they are overpaying, they are overcommitting. They kind of saw the success post Endgame where they got to plan all this out. Okay, just put out as much as possible. People are eating this up, not really thinking about why they're eating it up. And obviously the quality has, diluted immensely since then. And now they don't even know what they're doing. It's kind of a Star Wars thing where they're putting different people in charge of different things when it should still be one set vision, and it isn't. And now no one knows what's going on. There's too much to watch. And just how do you keep following it? I feel like you have to be a diehard fan to want to stick with it. And even then, there's probably some of it that just doesn't make any sense. I can't imagine that it's all like somehow fitting together. I haven't obviously watched everything, but just from what I have seen, it just nothing connects to anything else, and it's just been a mess. And I'm just kind of ready for them to move on or for something else to take its place, because I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that this book that I've been reading, MCU: The Reign of Marvel Studios, has revealed is that one of the reasons why the TV shows, in addition to just the constant content throughout and the emphasis on quantity over quality, and just the fact that they can't mix and match the process that they used that made the movie so appealing and so enjoyable for so many years. Just they can't possibly apply it to that many TV shows and that many projects that they're putting out per year, and just the overhaul on it. I mean, you have the showrunner of Moon Knight reveals that he quit halfway through the process. The showrunner of WandaVision, Jack Schaefer, said that the reason why the final episode came out the way that it did is because they literally couldn't shoot it for like months because Marvel would not allow them to, because Marvel didn't even know how WandaVision was going to connect to the next thing. The Marvel Brain Trust, which is literally the title that they have for the creative panel that dictates the direction that the stories are going to go, has kind of like combusted. You have all these executives that have been fired, all these new executives that have come in to try and take their place, and there's been like a massive pullback in terms of the amount of content that they're putting out. Zhao, what are your thoughts on all of this? I know you're always
I
a
have
little bit.
so many thoughts.
Yeah, you're always a little bit. Your thoughts are always interesting because you've always come at it from a different angle than the rest of us. But I am particularly interested to hear.
Yes,
your
and I will do it again because like. How did you guys enjoy Dune 2? Did you guys saw it?
Oh, you mean the movie that was supposed to come out this weekend that they delayed to March?
The movie that got delayed, like every goddamn movie that got delayed. But when Marvel gets delayed, oh my god, there must be a problem there. Every goddamn movie got delayed. So I don't know why it's so strange now that the movies of Marvel are getting delayed, because the whole like Hollywood industry just stopped because there was strikes. So now when it's happening to Marvel, people are and this is the thing. I'm gonna go in every single point you guys made.
Yes,
because
please do.
You guys just went before. Oh my god, they spent so much money on every episode of She-Hulk. But then everyone is complaining because Blade is going to be under 100 million. So that's a problem. But when he spent too much money, it's a problem. When everyone goes and sees these Marvel movies and they're like 2 hours, almost 3 hours, everyone complains why they're so long. Do we need a Then they do a shorter movie. Everyone complains that it's too short. So this is the goddamn thing. The problem I keep saying. The problem is too many people having internet. If you cut the internet for most people, like because everyone has a goddamn opinion, and everyone makes like these assumptions that Marvel's is gonna be this flop. It didn't even come out. It might be like most movies are. Like a lot of movies are being flops. And it's not because they're not creative. It's not because they're not good. Like The Creator, that is a goddamn great movie that came out. I think it just broke 100 million. It was like a goddamn flop. It's not because it's not good. It's not because it doesn't have people that dedicate everything to it. So the Marvels, yeah, it might not work and there might be too many things, but Marvel is kind of like solving it. Now, for example, with Echo, that we saw the new trailer, they just launched a new thing called Spotlight. There it's going to be projects. They're not going to be so much connected to everything else. So it's going to be their own thing. Is that something that people are going on? Like they're like, oh, they're not going to connect this. So why they're not going to connect it? So, like, to be honest, I just think, and I'm going to go again on my old guy thing saying, we used to get like a superhero movie every 2 or 3 years when we were lucky. We got Batman, and then we got like Blade and whatever an old time ago, and we would just enjoy it. And now we just complain. Look, if you don't like the Marvels, don't fucking watch it. Like, you don't have to watch it. There's no one with a gun forcing you to go to the cinema. Like Thor: Love and Thunder, me and my daughter, we had a blast with it. We think it's Monty Python's for Marvel. We loved it. It's like a comedy. If you're expecting it to be a serious Thor movie that is like it's not gonna be that. And looking at the director, looking at everything, why would you expect it to be that? This is what I keep on saying. If you go into a Fast and the Furious movie expecting for like Oscar performances, you're gonna be disappointed. So when you go into a Marvel movie, why the hell are you going with these things like, oh, I just pisses me off. I'm sorry, it just pisses me off because like all the news that are coming out, I think is really good. People were complaining there was too many TV shows. They stopped production. Okay, people were complaining Daredevil was gonna be a joke. It was not gonna be like the Netflix. They stopped production, and they are now doing it how everyone wanted it to be. And now that's a problem too. They're like, oh my god, they filming it again. It must be shit. So look, I don't know how Marvel can now like win because I think you guys were right. DC used to be the butt of the joke. Now that DC is not even a joke because he's dead, people need a new one to like to get on it. So I think like if I was Disney, I would make some new Star Wars movies because that's the favorite anger issue of everyone. So I would make some Star Wars movie to get the attention there and leave Marvel alone. I would do shitty Star Wars movies on purpose so everyone would focus on that because I think now it's like it's a badge of honor. If you're not shitting on a Marvel movie, you're not part of the community. And that's why I don't get it. And that's me. Like I don't get it.
Oh man,
Fair.
Yolo, this is why we keep bringing you back over and over again because you have your viewpoint on these things is so different from everybody else's. Yeah, it's just what it comes down to. It's just the fact that, like I said, we're too spoiled of a generation, and it's the generation that grew up on this and that grew up with two things. They grew up with Marvel, they grew up with social media, so it's the only two things that they know how to talk about. But a couple of things only. I agree with you in the sense of like, yes, I hope that Disney is going to make some changes that help improve it for the better, but I'm skeptical only because it really doesn't even have to do with a quantity over quality thing. It just has to come with like just as far as the story of what we enjoyed, how it started with Iron Man and ended with Endgame, with this whole new iteration that we're getting. It hasn't been as a story as compelling to me as the Infinity Saga was, which is why I think I myself am more critical on individual entries within this section of Marvel than I was with the first half, because I could see that with the first half, at the very least, even if each individual entry wasn't as good as the last one, it was still building to something that then inevitably got paid off. And with this one, with this iteration, with the multiverse saga, it feels like just everything is just on an island of its own, and how it all connects is just like either really, really loose and all over the place, or just not well done at all, and between all, we've gotten so many different things in the last 2 years, and not all of it connects super well, and it feels very, very disjointed. The other thing being that I feel like a lot of this media attention that it's getting obviously is in response to the book, but also is that the media narrative always wants to portray things one way, which is that everything is a catastrophe, everything is always bad, nothing is ever good, nothing is ever going to get fixed. And the truth of the matter is they will find a way out of this. Right now I feel like the biggest hurdle that they still have to leap over is the actor strike, which still as of this moment has not been resolved. I know that SAG-AFTRA leaders are still in heavy negotiations with AMPTP. Supposedly AMPTP is putting their final offer on their table as we are entering month. The actor strike started in July. We're almost about to be at 6 months of this actor strike. So we'll see where that goes as well. Yeah, so I guess my whole thing with just as far as Marvel goes, there are individual entries that I still look forward to. I still am looking forward to this Fantastic Four movie, mostly because the amount of plot details that have been released around that movie, that's going to be the first mainstream Marvel movie that's not set in the primary Marvel timeline, and that could be interesting as well as the casting that's been surrounding that movie. Supposedly they have a finalized cast. I believe the last thing I heard said that Jake Gyllenhaal was going to be was going to be Mr. Fantastic. But I guess the only other big thing about Marvel is like this Jonathan Majors thing. I will say with that one, because that's less of a creative thing. That one they kind of just backed themselves into a corner on. I mean, once again, it's an issue of, okay, how could they have known? But at the same time, it's like, wow, they put all the emphasis onto this guy as far as Kang being like the new epicenter. It was kind of a ballsy move, really, after how Thanos was really only kind of hinted at throughout all of these movies, but the heroes were the mainstay of the movies, and Thanos really didn't become front and center until Infinity War and Endgame. Versus Kang, they've been setting up Kang since Loki, which was the third thing we got in this multiverse saga. They've been setting him up for a while now.
Yeah, but again, it would be the same thing like when they were after the first Avengers. Robert Downey Jr. just got drunk and killed someone. It would have been the same thing. You cannot control something like this. And the thing, again, everyone complained when DC didn't do anything about the Flash after all the problems the actor had. Everyone was like, oh my God, he's not doing anything. And now, because Disney is kind of saying, okay, we're gonna wait to see what's gonna happen, and then if he like is guilty, we're gonna like find a solution. And people again are not happy with that. I don't see
Well,
what
see, it's
was
funny
the
that you.
thing.
I'm actually glad you brought that up. It's really funny that you bring that up because, if anything, I would almost say that that's Marvel like taking a lesson from that. Because I would argue that it was DC's insistence on sticking with Ezra Miller and defending and going behind him so hard. That was one of the reasons why the Flash cratered and bottomed out so much. On top of all the other behind the scenes issues, because DC stuck with Ezra Miller so hard, and a lot of people did not even want to watch that movie. Nothing to do with the movie or anything going on with itself, but because they didn't want to support Ezra Miller. And Disney, which for the most part has, kind of, you're right, been biding their time, waiting out the Jonathan Majors trial to see what happens before they just but rather than straight up firing him, which is what they would have done had this happened like a couple of years ago, because they still kept him in Loki season 2. They did not cut him out of that show when he was set to be in it. When they so easily could have and worked around him. And it's only now with the looming trial and the fact that they have to worry about with their scheduling, right? It's a scheduling thing, right? Where it's like, okay, we know that if we're gonna hit that 2026 release date, we got to start like pre-production sometime soon. And if they still don't even know if they're gonna have a star, if anything, I am more understanding of why they are making this decision to potentially pivot away from Kang than the Ezra Miller thing. I would say that if anything,
But I
that's a
don't
lesson
think,
learned.
I don't think the lesson is from Ezra Miller. I think Disney, the lesson is because of Johnny Depp. They did the mistake of putting Johnny Depp out from Pirates of the Caribbean straight away, and now with all like what happened, they don't want to do that again.
Right,
Okay,
right.
that is the thing. It's not Ezra Miller, because Ezra Miller, like, I'm sorry, DC kind of did a mistake there
Oh,
because
absolutely, absolutely. That was
like
a huge mistake on their part.
and this I think is different because we still don't know if he's guilty or not. And the
Right.
thing here is, and to be honest, I don't think like this is the news that comes out, because like you said, I think Doctor Doom was always in the picture. It was always in the plan. I even told you I think Doctor Doom is already cast. I keep to my theory that like Steven Yeun on the Thunderbolts is gonna play Doctor Doom. I'll bet on it, because I think he's going to be introduced there. So I think it was always in the plans. What they're trying to say is we'll probably have to like kick him in a little bit earlier, give him a little bit more to do. Because, like, to be honest, if they want to keep Kang is very easy to keep on, because they just have to find an excuse that one of the variants does not look like Jonathan Majors.
Right,
And
exactly. Exactly.
from all the characters that they have on, Kang is the easiest one to find a way to replace them. Like, and they did it with War Machine. They did it like, and they even joked about it. So I don't
So
think
many
that.
times.
Yeah, so I don't even think it's like that bigger of an issue. What they are still seeing is, I think the problem is not even Jonathan Majors. What they are seeing is that most people are not grasping the idea of the multiverse as they expected. I think it's getting very like, and most people that are not watching every single show, every single thing, are going in and seeing different characters with different actors and stuff. They're going like, whoa, what did I miss? So I think they're probably thinking, okay, let's bring Doctor Doom in, let's change this a bit, let's kind of like tweak it out a bit. And I think it's that. I think that they are like, as the train is going, they adapting. But this is the thing, like, and I'm gonna go again. I think all of us have really like pink glasses looking at the first phase of the MCU. We all go, "Oh my god, everything was so perfect." Like in the end of the Avengers, we had Thanos that looked like
Oh
something out of
God.
Power Rangers,
Oh God.
sitting on a chair saying, "Oh, I'll do it myself." Where the fuck did he go for like 20 other movies? I'll do it myself. Right. So the thing is, we look back after all it's done and we say, oh my God, everything fit it so perfectly. And now we're watching a movie, we don't know what's coming after, and we are like, oh, this is not gonna work. This is not fitting into to the story they created. We don't even know the story they're creating. This is like I said, the problem with the Marvel movies is they work like TV shows. Okay, if you watch one movie and you like start putting everything together from that one movie, you don't get the whole picture. It's like us watching the Invincible first episode and saying, oh, I don't think this is going to work because of this, and this. We don't know. We have no idea. So I still think they are kind of like tweaking their things. And I'm sorry, they had the bad luck that the guy did that. Like they can't predict that. They can't like say because it could be it could be Chris Hemsworth, it could be any of the key figures of the first ones, and they would have the same problem. So even if the villain wasn't always the same, I don't think it's like a question of putting all the eggs in one basket. Is they had bad luck with that guy doing that, so now they readapting. And I'm gonna shut up. I've been talking too much.
No, come on. You know that we love when you go on reds like this. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to say the least. And I like the Thanos point that you bring up because you're right. Because that's another reason why I encourage everybody to go and read this book if you get a chance, because it's basically showing that like, wow, the amount of stuff that we kind of give them credit for that they were just kind of flying by the seat of their pants in terms of, okay, Joss Whedon decided to just stick Thanos in at the end of the Avengers because he thought it would be cool. And then that leads to him becoming the final end-all, be-all, big bad that they face at the in Infinity War and Endgame. And everyone kind of giving them credit for being like, wow, that was so planned. And Marvel's just sitting there being like, yeah, sure, we totally planned for that all from the beginning. It's going to be interesting as we keep track and as the stories continue, to say the least. The Marvels gets released next week. We'll see what that's going to open up tracking-wise. That Eli, you got anything to contribute to all of that? With all that being said, before we get out of here.
No, I mean, I think these are great points, and I think I don't necessarily agree with like everyone's complaining about everything. Maybe you guys are reading things that I don't. I don't have Twitter, so maybe I'm exposed to less.
Eli, don't you mean X?
Oh, right, my bad. X.
It's never gonna not be funny. It's never gonna not be funny.
From my perspective, I'm not necessarily complaining if Marvel's trying to fix things around that haven't been working. In fact, I'd encourage it. You know, if they're spending less money on like shows that they've massively overspent on, good. Then
their budgets need to be lower to begin with, because those budgets that they've been spending money on recently, just in general, has been absurd.
Other good, better projects. You know, maybe we'll get better movies if they do less TV shows. You know, and less more resources to allocate in that regard. And I mean, me personally, I mean, there's always going to be haters no matter what, because some people just have no lives and will sit on the internet and just spam and spam and spam.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that Marvel's like validated most of that fan base for so many years now.
Yeah, and the media is going to pick up on it. The media is always going to try and get the clicks, right? So they're going to say the most outlandish things, and not necessarily the hot take or the most popular takes at the time, just something to get clicks, right? It's all a business. You got to remember that. So I think it definitely isn't as big of a deal in terms of like how people are reacting as maybe it is from your perspective. I just I don't really hear much of that myself. But then again, I'd also consider myself more of a casual fan with these kinds of things. Yeah. So there perhaps is a much deeper community than all of that.
I guess just the interest for me being that, like, I always love whenever we talk about things and then 2 or 3 years later, everyone in general is talking about the same things we've already talked about, but they're losing their minds over it and they're being like, oh no, the world's ending. And it's like, we've been talking about this for years and you guys are just catching up to it now. I don't know. It always amuses me to say the least, but I heavily encourage people, if you have not read it, go out there, find a copy. I know it's available on Amazon, on all the Kindle stores and everything. If
I
not,
just added it to my wish list.
Yes, MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, definitely heavily recommend it. There's some fascinating stuff in there, to say the least. If you're a super hardcore Marvel fan, if you're a casual fan, I think it's safe to say that it's that if you are not a fan of Marvel or do not know about them in some way in the year 2023, I am impressed, to say the least, because how have you not heard about them over the last 10, 15 years now, just about. So with that being said, that's it. That's another episode of the Talking TV podcast. What's it called? Eli, Joe, thanks for coming on once again. We've only got 7 more episodes before the year is over, but you will definitely see these guys on, if not for the rest of this year, then definitely in 2024 for our 6th season podcasting. Wow, I can't believe it. We're already halfway. We're already at the community number. Joe, happy to have you back on, man. As always, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
So yeah, you guys can follow us on Instagram, on Unyolo Movies blog. We do like reviews and everything, me and my daughter, little J. And we also have a TikTok where we share like videos and stuff that we like. So you can check us there, and that's pretty much it.
Of course. Eli, where can the good people follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to follow me, I have an Instagram. That's basically the only thing I have available to the public. The handle is E_Holicky, like you see it spelled on the screen, 45. That is E_Holicky 45. Shoot me a DM. Love talking about movies, TV, storytelling in general. I'm always happy to talk about that. And eventually I'm going to be making a soccer podcast channel. So if any small fraction of you out there that actually do follow professional soccer, I am with soccer that I am that Dom is to movies, I should say. I'm
Yes,
a nut.
absolutely.
I'm an absolute nut. So
Absolutely, yeah. Joe and Luke definitely will want to get on that once
Yeah.
once you eventually get it going. I believe they're gonna have some strong things to say in general. You guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to follow the official Talking TV podcast across all platforms. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. This episode will be available tomorrow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you can get your audio versions of your media in general. Podcasts are the future of information spread. As always, for myself, Eli, and Joe, 12 seasons in a short film. We're almost to 6. It's kind of crazy. And watch more fucking movies. And in this case, TV. We'll see you guys next week for The Marvels and The Killer.